Marissa hasn't seen her feet in 7 years. She hasn't left her bedroom in 4. This morning she couldn't reach the phone when her heart started racing at 140 beats per minute. Her sister found her gasping, skin mottled purple where the lymphedema had split open during the night. The infection spreading beneath 687 pounds of immobile tissue doesn't respond to oral antibiotics anymore. Dr. Brennan said the words clearly: 6 months, maybe less, without intervention. But intervention requires something Marissa has never been able to give. The surgery that could save her life can't happen at this weight. Her body won't survive it. 90 days to lose enough weight to qualify. 90 days to prove she wants to live more than she wants to eat. The clock started yesterday. She ordered pizza last night. The ceiling fan hasn't worked in 2 years. Marissa watches it anyway, motionless above her bed, collecting dust in patterns she's memorized. The blades cast shadows across water-stained plaster when afternoon light filters through curtains that haven't been opened in months. She knows it's afternoon by the angle. She knows most things by angles now: the tilt of sunlight, the slope of her sister's shoulders when she enters the room, the precise degree at which her own body has settled into the reinforced hospital bed that dominates what used to be a guest bedroom. 687 pounds, distributed across a frame that once carried 140. The math seems impossible even to her. She doesn't know when the tipping point came, when gaining weight shifted from something she was doing to something that was happening to her. Autonomous and unstoppable as a mudslide, somewhere between 300 and 400 pounds, she suspects. That's when walking became painful, when stairs became impossible, when leaving the house required planning and shame in equal measure. Now the house has shrunk to 12 by 14 feet, pale yellow walls, a dresser she can't reach, a television mounted high enough that she can see it over the landscape of her own body. The bathroom is 8 feet away. It might as well be 8 miles. The bed itself is a monument to medical necessity. Steel frame rated for 1,000 pounds. Pressure-relieving mattress that cost more than her sister's car. Side rails that Claire insisted on after Marissa rolled too far one night and nearly tumbled to the floor. A fall that would have required paramedics, humiliation, and possibly a structural evaluation of the floorboards. The rails stay up now. They make her feel like a child. They make her feel like cargo. Her body has become geography. The lymphedema in her legs has transformed them into swollen columns of fluid and tissue, skin stretched so tight it weeps clear liquid that soaks through dressings twice a day. Her abdomen hangs in a mass that covers her thighs when she's sitting, rests beside her when she's lying down. The skin underneath stays perpetually damp, breeding fungal infections that smell like yeast and rot no matter how much Claire cleans. The scent has become invisible to Marissa. She only notices it when Claire's face tightens. Breathing requires thought. Each inhale presses against the weight on her chest, her diaphragm fighting gravity with every breath. She sleeps propped at 45 degrees on pillows that have to be replaced every few months when they compress to nothing under her back and shoulders. Sleep apnea wakes her gasping 6 or 7 times a night. The CPAP machine sits on the nightstand, mask dangling. She stopped wearing it months ago. The straps left welts. The pressure made her feel like she was suffocating. She knows the irony. She doesn't care. Movement is negotiation. Rolling to her left side requires planning. Hands positioned, momentum gathered, a rocking motion that takes 3 attempts. The bed frame creaks. Her breathing becomes audible. By the time she's settled, her heart rate has climbed to 120, and sweat has formed in every fold of skin. To sit up fully requires Claire's help, 2 hands pulling while Marissa pushes, their combined effort barely sufficient to raise her torso to vertical. They don't attempt it unless necessary. It exhausts them both. The bedside table holds her phone, a water bottle with a straw, and whatever book she's not reading. She used to read voraciously. Now her attention span collapses after half a page. The phone is her primary connection to the world beyond these walls. Food delivery apps, social media accounts she scrolls through without commenting, text messages from the few friends who still reach out with decreasing frequency. She orders meals through the phone 3 times a day, sometimes 4. Claire brings them wordlessly. They don't discuss it anymore. Eating has become her only reliable pleasure, the only activity her body can still perform without pain or assistance. The food arrives in bags and boxes. She eats directly from containers, balanced on her stomach or held in hands that have grown thick and clumsy. The flavors provide 15 minutes of chemical satisfaction, dopamine-flooding synapses that have learned to crave it above everything else. After eating, there's always a brief window of something approaching contentment. Then the shame arrives, and the discomfort, and the knowledge that she's just made everything worse. Then the cycle begins again. The bathroom visits are the worst. 3 times a day if she's lucky, fewer if she restricts water intake. Claire helps her to the bedside commode, a process that takes 10 minutes and leaves them both sweating. The commode is industrial medical equipment, rated for her weight, positioned inches from the bed, 8 feet to the actual bathroom. Impossible distance. She hasn't showered in a proper shower in 4 years. Claire does bed baths with hospital wipes and basins of warm water, section by section, lifting and cleaning in a routine they've developed without ever discussing it. Marissa stares at the ceiling fan during these cleanings. Claire hums tunelessly. Neither speaks. This is life now. This is what life has become. The walls of the room feel closer every month, though she knows they haven't moved. Her world has contracted to the size of a bed, the length of a phone cord, the distance food can travel from delivery driver to door to bedside. Everyone says she's killing herself. They're wrong. She's already dead. This is just the part where her body catches up to that fact. Dr. Brennan doesn't understand that yet. He will. Marissa was 11 when her mother died. Pancreatic cancer, 6 weeks from diagnosis to funeral. One day her mother was complaining about back pain, the next she was yellow with jaundice, and then she was gone. The speed of it left no room for preparation, no chance to say the things that needed saying. Just an empty chair at the kitchen table and a silence that filled the house like floodwater. Her father didn't know what to do with an 11-year-old daughter and his own grief. He worked longer hours at the plant, came home exhausted, microwaved dinners in silence, and disappeared into the bedroom that still smelled like his wife's perfume. Marissa learned early not to bother him with school permission slips or requests for help with homework. She learned to be invisible, to take up as little space as possible in a house that suddenly felt too big and too empty at the same time. Claire was already 19, already moved out and working at the hospital as a nursing assistant. She came by on weekends with groceries and guilt, trying to fill a role she was too young to understand. She brought food because food was something concrete, something she could provide when she didn't know how to provide comfort. Casseroles and cookies and bags of chips that Marissa could eat alone in her room while her father watched television downstairs in the dark. The eating started as absence of supervision. No one monitored what she ate or when. No one noticed if she had cereal for breakfast, and then again for lunch, and then again at midnight. Her father kept the pantry stocked with easy things: crackers, cookies, frozen pizzas, boxes of macaroni and cheese that required only boiling water. Marissa learned to cook these things herself by age 12. She learned that a full stomach felt almost like being held. Middle school was a wasteland of social hierarchies she couldn't navigate. She had no close friends, no extracurriculars, no identity beyond the quiet girl whose mom died. She ate lunch alone in the library, reading fantasy novels where orphaned children discovered they were secretly important, secretly powerful, secretly destined for something better than grief and silence. Between chapters, she ate vending machine snacks. After school, she walked home to an empty house and made herself dinner before her father got home. The routine became armor. By 13, she'd gained 40 pounds. Her clothes didn't fit. Her father noticed enough to leave money for new ones, but not enough to ask questions. Claire noticed and said gentle things about vegetables and walking, suggestions that evaporated as soon as she drove away. No one pushed. Everyone was still tiptoeing around the dead woman in the room, afraid that acknowledging one problem might crack open all the others. High school brought new weight and old isolation. She was fat now, visibly fat, the kind of fat that made her a target for casual cruelty in hallways and deliberate exclusion from anything social. She learned to eat lunch in bathroom stalls. She learned that being invisible was easier when you took up more space, a paradox that made sense only to her. The bigger she got, the less people looked at her directly. They looked past her, through her, their eyes sliding away as if she were furniture. Food became architecture. It structured her days, gave her something to look forward to, provided reliable comfort in a world that offered none. She'd come home from school and eat until the loneliness receded to manageable levels. A bag of chips, a sleeve of cookies, whatever leftovers sat in the refrigerator. The eating wasn't about hunger. It was about filling something that had been hollowed out the day her mother died and never properly healed. Her father died when she was 17. Heart attack at the factory, quick and brutal. She found out when Claire called from the hospital, voice flat with shock. They buried him next to their mother. Marissa felt nothing at the funeral except the tightness of her dress across her back and the knowledge that she was now alone in a way that felt permanent. She moved in with Claire after that. Claire's apartment was small, but Claire insisted. Someone had to take care of her. That's what Claire said. What Claire meant was that she'd failed to take care of her after their mother died, and this was her chance at redemption. Marissa knew this, but accepted anyway because the alternative was being completely alone. The weight climbed steadily. 200 pounds at 18, 250 at 20. She tried community college but dropped out after one semester. She tried part-time jobs, but none lasted more than a few months. Standing for long shifts hurt her knees and back. Customer service required a cheerfulness she couldn't manufacture. She collected disability eventually, a small check each month that paid for her portion of rent and not much else. Claire worked doubles at the hospital and came home to find Marissa on the couch, surrounded by delivery containers and candy wrappers. They fought about it sometimes, careful fights that never escalated because Claire was terrified of pushing too hard, and Marissa was terrified of being abandoned. The fights always ended the same way. Claire crying in her bedroom, Marissa ordering more food, both of them pretending the next morning that nothing had happened. 300 pounds, 400. The numbers climbed while the world shrank. She stopped going out except for medical appointments, stopped seeing the few acquaintances who'd bothered to stay in touch, stopped pretending she had any kind of future beyond the next meal, the next delivery, the next day exactly like the one before. By the time she crossed 500 pounds, she'd stopped thinking of it as a problem to solve. It was just what she was now. A body built from grief and neglect and the desperate need to feel something other than empty. The weight was consequence and cause, punishment and comfort, the physical manifestation of everything she'd never learned to process any other way. She never chose this, but every day, she chose it again. Claire hasn't slept through the night in 3 years. She wakes at 2, at 4, at 5:30, her body trained to listen for sounds from the other room. Labored breathing, calls for help, the particular silence that means something has gone wrong. She lies in her own bed, staring at her own ceiling, and listens to her sister exist 12 feet away through a thin wall. Some nights, the guilt keeps her awake more effectively than any sound. She's 41 now, though people often guess younger until they look closely at her eyes. She works as a nurse at County General, rotating between the ICU and the cardiac ward, 12-hour shifts that leave her physically and emotionally depleted. She comes home to a second job that never ends. No days off, no vacation time, no escape from the relentless machinery of keeping another person alive when that person has stopped participating in her own survival. The apartment they share is a prison they've both built together. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen Claire barely uses anymore because cooking feels like complicity. The living room went first, converted into Marissa's bedroom, when the stairs to the second-floor apartment became impossible. They broke the lease, moved here, ground floor accessible. Claire paid the deposits and the moving costs and the fees for the specialized bed. She paid for everything. She always pays for everything. Her paycheck from the hospital covers rent and utilities and medical supplies. The wound dressings, the antifungal creams, the heavy-duty trash bags required for the volume of waste Marissa generates. What's left goes to food, not groceries, delivery food, fast food. Restaurant food marked up 30% through apps that Marissa operates from her phone with practiced efficiency. Claire sees the charges on her credit card. She never says anything. What would be the point? The morning routine starts at 6. Claire's alarm, shower, coffee, the brief pretense that she's a normal person living a normal life. Then she opens Marissa's door and the pretense evaporates. The smell hits first. Unwashed body, old food containers, the sweet rot of skin infections barely controlled by medications. She doesn't react to it anymore. She crosses to the bed and assesses. Is Marissa awake? Is she in pain? Are there new wounds? Is the lymphedema worse? Most mornings Marissa is already awake, scrolling through her phone, illuminated by blue light in a dark room. They don't say good morning. They've moved past pleasantries into something more honest and more terrible. A transactional relationship where Claire provides care and Marissa accepts it with diminishing gratitude and increasing resentment. The commode needs emptying. The bed needs fresh sheets if there's been leakage during the night. Marissa needs help sitting up, needs her wounds cleaned and dressed, needs her medications organized and administered. Claire does it all with the clinical efficiency she learned in nursing school, the emotional detachment she's cultivated as a survival mechanism. She doesn't think about the fact that this is her sister. She thinks about it as a job. Thinking about it any other way would break her. By 7:30, she's heading to the hospital for her shift. Marissa calls her around 10 to say she's hungry. Claire knows what comes next. The request will be specific. A particular restaurant, particular items, sometimes totaling $40 or $50 for a single meal. If Claire says no, Marissa will order it herself on Claire's credit card. If Claire says nothing, Marissa will order it anyway. There's no winning scenario. There's only the choice between active participation and passive acceptance of the inevitable. Claire used to argue. She used to come home with groceries, with healthy options, with meal plans printed from websites about nutrition and weight loss. She used to believe that love and structure could overcome addiction. She learned otherwise slowly, painfully, through hundreds of fights that ended with Marissa in tears and Claire questioning whether she was helping or just prolonging the inevitable. The truth that Claire doesn't say out loud, part of her wants Marissa to die. Not because she hates her sister, but because she's so tired she can't see straight anymore. Because she's 41 and single and childless, and every day of her life is consumed by someone else's self-destruction. Because she goes to work and saves lives, and comes home to watch her sister end hers in slow motion, and the cognitive dissonance is driving her insane. But the other truth, equally strong, if Marissa dies, Claire will never forgive herself. Every meal she facilitated, every boundary she failed to enforce, every night she went to bed instead of staging an intervention, all of it will become evidence of her failure. She's trapped between killing her sister with kindness and abandoning her to die alone. There's no third option visible from where she stands. She's tried setting boundaries. Last year she told Marissa she wouldn't order food anymore, wouldn't enable the behavior that was killing her. Marissa said fine. Then Marissa started ordering directly, charging everything to Claire's card because she had no income of her own. When Claire removed the card from Marissa's phone, Marissa called in a panic about chest pains. Claire rushed home from work to find her sister fine, just hungry and angry, and willing to weaponize Claire's fear to get what she wanted. After that, Claire stopped trying. It was easier to participate than to fight. Easier to hand over the food than to endure the manipulation, the guilt trips, the reminders that Claire was all Marissa had left. She became complicit, not out of weakness, but out of exhaustion, the kind of bone-deep fatigue that makes surrender feel like wisdom. At the hospital, she cares for patients who want to get better. She sees people fight for their lives, grateful for every intervention, desperate for one more day. Then she comes home to someone who's given up but won't die, who exists in a liminal space between living and waiting, and who drags Claire down with her through sheer gravitational pull. Dr. Brennan's ultimatum came as a relief. Finally, someone else willing to say no. Finally, a consequence that Claire couldn't prevent or postpone. Finally, a deadline that might force the change she's been unable to create. But she knows Marissa better than the doctor does. She knows what's coming. She knows her sister will fail, and she knows she'll be there to pick up the pieces or bury them, whichever comes first. Dr. Brennan arrived at the apartment on a Tuesday morning with a portable scale rated for 800 pounds and an expression that revealed nothing. Claire had warned Marissa he was coming. Marissa had considered refusing to see him, but the chest pains had been getting worse, and the shortness of breath and the feeling that her body was actively trying to kill her from the inside out. Fear won over pride. She agreed to the home visit. He was younger than she expected, maybe 50, with grey at his temples and the kind of calm authority that came from years of delivering bad news. He'd specialized in bariatric medicine for 2 decades, had seen hundreds of patients at extreme weights, had performed surgeries that gave people their lives back. Claire had researched him extensively before making the call. His reputation was impeccable. His success rate was high. His willingness to accept patients over £600 was rare. He entered Marissa's room without hesitation, without the momentary pause most people showed when they first saw her. He introduced himself, shook her hand like she was a person, not a spectacle, and asked if he could examine her. His voice was professional but not cold, clinical but not cruel. She nodded. The examination was thorough and humiliating in equal measure. He checked her vital signs first. Blood pressure, 170/110, dangerously high. Heart rate, 98 at rest, elevated. Oxygen saturation, 91%, lower than normal. He listened to her heart and lungs, frowning slightly at what he heard. He examined the lymphedema in her legs, pressing gently against tissue that had lost all elasticity. Fluid wept from the pressure points. He noted it without comment. Then he looked at the wounds, the places where her skin had split under its own weight, where infections had taken hold despite Claire's diligent care. He photographed them with a medical camera, documented their locations and severity. Stage 3 ulcers on both legs, fungal infections in every skin fold, cellulitis that had become chronic, recurring every few weeks despite antibiotics. When he finished, he pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down, eye level with her. That alone was unusual. Most doctors stood, maintaining the physical hierarchy of authority. He sat. "Marissa," he said, "I'm going to be direct with you because anything else would be a disservice. You're dying, not eventually, not someday, now, actively. Your heart is working 3 times harder than it should. Your lungs can't properly oxygenate your blood. Your kidneys are starting to fail. The infections in your legs will eventually become septic if they haven't already. You have maybe 6 months, maybe a year if you're lucky, and the death won't be peaceful. It will be painful and degrading and completely preventable." Marissa stared at him. She'd heard versions of this speech before from other doctors, from Claire, from the voice in her own head at 3 in the morning, but no one had ever said it quite so plainly, with so little room for denial. "There's a solution," he continued. "Bariatric surgery, gastric bypass. It would restrict your stomach capacity, force portion control, give you a tool to work with instead of against. I've seen it save lives. I've seen people lose £300 and get their lives back. But here's the problem. I can't operate on you at your current weight. Your body won't survive the surgery. The anesthesia alone could kill you. Your heart could fail on the table. The risk is unacceptable." He paused, letting that sink in. "You need to lose weight before I can help you. Significant weight. I need you under £600, ideally closer to £550. That's a minimum of £87. More would be better. And I need to see that you're capable of following a structured eating plan. Because the surgery is only a tool. If you can't control your eating before surgery, you won't control it after. And we'll have put you through major surgery for nothing." "How long?" Marissa's voice came out smaller than she intended. 3 months, he said. 90 days. That's enough time to see real progress if you commit, not enough time to play games or make excuses. You'll follow a meal plan I provide. 1,500 calories a day, high protein, low carbohydrate. You'll check in with my office weekly by phone. You'll weigh in monthly here at home. If you lose the weight and demonstrate compliance, we schedule surgery. If you don't, I can't help you, and you'll need to find another doctor willing to take that risk. Most won't." He stood up, gathering his equipment. "I'm not trying to be cruel," he said, "but I've learned that false hope is crueler than hard truth. You have one chance here, one opportunity to save your own life. Everything else, your sister's support, my expertise, the possibility of surgery, all of it is meaningless if you don't do your part. The next 90 days will determine whether you live or die. That's not hyperbole. That's medical fact." He left the meal plan on her nightstand. Printed pages, laminated, impossible to ignore. Breakfast options, lunch options, dinner options. 1,500 calories. Numbers that seemed impossibly small compared to what she consumed daily. She looked at them after he left. after Claire walked him to the door, after the apartment fell silent again. 1,500 calories, 90 days, £87 minimum. She picked up her phone and opened a delivery app. Her hands were shaking. The meal plan sat on the nightstand, pristine and accusatory. She ordered Chinese food, enough for 2 people, charged to Claire's card. The confirmation came through instantly. Estimated delivery 40 minutes. She put the phone down and stared at the ceiling fan. The blades hung motionless. Dust gathered in patterns she'd memorized. Nothing changed. Nothing ever changed. Dr. Brennan didn't understand that yet, but he would. The first week, Marissa followed the meal plan perfectly. She ate the prescribed portions, logged everything in the app Dr. Brennan's office provided, sent photos of her meals to the monitoring nurse. Claire prepared the food exactly as specified: grilled chicken breast, steamed vegetables, measured portions of brown rice. The meals looked sad on the plate, institutional and joyless, but Marissa ate them without complaint. She was motivated. She was committed. She was going to prove everyone wrong. By day 4, she was dreaming about pizza. By day 6, the hunger had become a physical presence, a clawing emptiness that made concentration impossible. Her body was in withdrawal, screaming for the dopamine hits it had learned to expect every few hours. She sweated through her sheets. Her hands trembled. She snapped at Claire over nothing, picked fights that ended with both of them in tears. On day 8, she ordered a burger. Just one. A small one, not even a meal, just something to take the edge off. She ate it in 15 minutes and felt immediate relief, followed immediately by crushing guilt. She didn't log it. She told herself it was a one-time slip, that she'd get back on track tomorrow. Tomorrow came, she ordered Chinese food, then pizza, then both in the same day. By week 3, she'd abandoned the meal plan entirely, but continued sending fake photos to the monitoring nurse. She found pictures online, healthy meals that looked similar to what she was supposed to be eating, and submitted those. She told Claire she was handling her own food now, that she didn't need help anymore, that the constant supervision was making her feel infantilized. Claire, exhausted and wanting to believe, backed off. The weekly check-in calls became performances. Marissa lied smoothly, reported phantom successes, described a version of her life that existed only in her imagination. The nurse on the other end sounded encouraging, talked about how proud Dr. Brennan would be, mentioned how well Marissa was doing compared to other patients. Each compliment was a knife. Each word of praise made the deception feel more permanent, more impossible to undo. The first monthly weigh-in approached. Marissa knew she hadn't lost weight. The question was how much she'd gained. She considered cancelling, claiming illness, finding excuses to postpone. But Dr. Brennan's office called to confirm the appointment, sent a reminder email, made it clear that missing the weigh-in meant termination from the program. She was trapped. Claire brought the portable scale into Marissa's room the night before. Neither of them spoke. Claire set it up, calibrated it, then left without making eye contact. Marissa looked at it for an hour before attempting to transfer from the bed. The process required the walker, required 3 attempts to stand, required shuffling forward 6 inches at a time while her legs screamed and her heart hammered. By the time she positioned herself on the scale, she was dizzy and nauseous. The digital display climbed 600, 650, 680. It stopped at 721 pounds. She'd gained 34 pounds in 30 days. More than a pound a day. She stood there, staring at the number, until her legs started to buckle and she had to shuffle back to bed. She didn't tell Claire. She didn't tell anyone. When Dr. Brennan arrived the next morning, she knew immediately that he knew. He looked at the scale reading, then at her, and something shifted in his expression. Not anger, disappointment maybe, or resignation. He sat in the same chair as before, but this time he didn't make eye contact. 721, he said. You were 687 when I first saw you. That's a gain of 34 pounds. Would you like to explain that? Marissa said nothing. What explanation could possibly matter? The monitoring nurse showed me your food logs, he continued. The photos you submitted. I ran reverse image searches on 3 of them. All pulled from diet websites. Stock photos. You've been lying for a month. I tried, Marissa said. Her voice sounded hollow even to herself. I really tried at first. Trying isn't a trophy I can give you. Trying doesn't change the fact that you're heavier now than when we started. Do you understand what you've done? You've proven exactly what I needed to know, that you're not capable of compliance, that even with a death sentence hanging over you, even with a clear path to survival, you chose food over life. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. His voice was sharp now, the clinical detachment cracking. I have patients who would kill for the opportunity you're wasting. People who are desperate to change, who follow every instruction, who do the work even when it's agonizing. And you're lying to my staff, manipulating your sister, and gaining weight while pretending to be committed. He stood up, gathering his equipment with quick, angry movements. I'm giving you one more chance. One. Not because I think you deserve it, but because I took an oath and I'm not ready to give up on you yet, even if you've given up on yourself. 90 more days. Same requirement. 80 pounds minimum. But this time, no remote monitoring. You come to my office for weekly in-person weigh-ins. No more photos, no more self-reporting. You show up every Tuesday at 9 a.m. or you're out of the program, and if you gain another pound, even one, we're done. I can't leave the apartment, Marissa said. I can't fit in a car. Then you figure it out, medical transport, ambulance, I don't care. But you show up or you're finished. Do you understand? She nodded. Say it. I understand. 90 days, he said, already at the door. Starting today, don't waste them. After he left, Marissa lay in bed and stared at her phone. The delivery apps sat in a row on her home screen, bright icons promising instant comfort. Her credit card information was already saved. 2 taps and food would be on its way. She held the phone for 20 minutes, finger hovering over the screen. Then she ordered Thai food. Extra spring rolls. The confirmation appeared instantly. Estimated delivery, 35 minutes. She told herself she'd start tomorrow. She always started tomorrow. Marissa didn't go to the first weekly weigh-in, or the second, or the third. Dr. Brennan's office called each time, left messages that progressed from professional reminders to thinly veiled frustration. She let them go to voicemail, deleted them without listening to the full message, told herself she'd go next week. Next week turned into the week after. Time moved in the elastic way it does when you're avoiding consequences, both too fast and impossibly slow. Claire said nothing. She'd retreated into a silence that felt more damning than any argument. She went to work, came home, delivered food when asked, and spent her evenings locked in her bedroom. The apartment filled with the kind of quiet that precedes rupture, the held breath before the storm. Marissa felt it, but couldn't stop herself from making it worse. Week 7. The phone rang at 8 in the morning. Marissa almost didn't answer, but something about the persistence of it, the way it rang and started again immediately after going to voicemail, made her pick up. This is Dr. Brennan. His voice was clipped, professional, devoid of warmth. I'm calling to inform you that you've missed 3 consecutive appointments and failed to respond to multiple attempts at contact. As per our agreement, this constitutes termination from the program. I'm no longer accepting you as a patient. Wait. I don't have time for excuses. I have 15 patients currently waiting for surgery. People who show up, who do the work, who actually want to survive. I can't justify spending resources on someone who's demonstrated zero commitment. Your file will be closed today. I wish you the best, but I can't help you anymore. Please. The word came out before she could stop it. Please, I'll come in. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't. You've had 3 months. You've gained weight. You've lied to my staff. You've wasted everyone's time, including your own. What possible reason could I have to believe anything is going to change? Silence stretched between them. Marissa's heart was pounding, her mouth dry. She realized with sudden crystal clarity that he was serious. This wasn't a scare tactic. This was abandonment. This was the cliff edge she'd been dancing toward for months, and she'd finally run out of ground. I'm scared, she said finally. The truth, naked and pathetic. I'm terrified. Of failing. Of trying and still dying. Of being this for the rest of my life, which apparently won't be very long, so what does it even matter? Dr. Brennan was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted. Not softer exactly, but less sharp. You think I don't know scared when I see it. Fear is what brings every patient to my office. Fear of dying, fear of living like this forever, fear that they've destroyed themselves beyond repair. But there's a difference between being scared and being paralyzed. Between acknowledging fear and using it as permission to give up. I don't know how to do this. Yes, you do. You know exactly how. You just don't want to do it because it's hard and it hurts, and you've spent most of your life using food to avoid hard and painful things. But avoidance has an expiration date, and yours is coming up fast. He paused. She heard papers rustling on his end. Here's what's going to happen. I'm coming to your apartment tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I'm bringing a scale and a phlebotomist. We're going to weigh you, draw blood, and run a full metabolic panel. If your numbers show any deterioration, kidney function, liver enzymes, cardiac markers, you're going to the hospital whether you want to or not. If they're stable, you get one final chance, not 90 days this time, 62 months to lose 80 pounds. That's 10 pounds a week, which is aggressive but achievable at your weight. That's impossible. It's not impossible. It's difficult. There's a difference. And here's the part you're really not going to like. This time your sister controls all food that enters that apartment. Not you. You don't order anything. You don't have access to delivery apps or your credit cards. You eat what I prescribe when I prescribe it in the amounts I prescribe. No negotiations, no exceptions, no second chances. I can't force you to do anything. But these are the terms. Take them or leave them. And if you choose to leave them, understand what you're choosing. You're choosing to die, probably within the year, probably painfully. Organ failure, sepsis, heart attack. Take your pick. All preventable, all completely within your control. Marissa felt something crack open in her chest, a feeling she couldn't immediately name. Panic, maybe. Or the first stirrings of actual motivation, born from having a gun finally held to her head, with enough conviction that she believed someone might pull the trigger. If I do this, she said slowly, if I actually lose the weight, you'll do the surgery? If you lose the weight, demonstrate compliance, and your blood work shows you can survive the procedure, yes. I'll do the surgery. And then comes the harder part, keeping the weight off for the rest of your life. But we can't get to that problem until we solve the immediate one, which is that you're dying and apparently determined to speed up the process. Tomorrow morning, Marissa repeated. 9 a.m. 9 a.m. And Marissa, if you're not serious this time, don't waste my time. I mean that. I have limited resources and limited patience, and I've already extended both far beyond what I normally would. This is the last extension. Do you understand? Yes. Do you? Yes, she said again, and this time she almost believed herself. He hung up without saying goodbye. Marissa held the phone against her chest and stared at the ceiling. The fan was still broken. The dust was still there. Everything was exactly the same as it had been 5 minutes ago, except for the sudden, undeniable knowledge that she was out of moves, out of excuses, out of time. Claire appeared in the doorway. She must have been listening. "Did you mean it?" Claire asked. Her voice was hoarse, exhausted. "Any of it?" Marissa looked at her sister, really looked, maybe for the first time in months. The weight Claire carried wasn't visible on a scale, but it was there in the slump of her shoulders, the lines around her eyes, the way she held herself like someone braced for the next crisis. "I don't know," Marissa said. It was the most honest answer she'd given in years. "But I think I'm finally scared enough to find out." Doctor. Brennan arrived the next morning with the scale, the phlebotomist, and an expression that suggested he expected to find Marissa unchanged and unrepentant. He was half right. She was unchanged physically. Still 721 pounds, still bedridden, still occupying the same 12 by 14 feet of space. But something had shifted internally, some small pilot light of survival instinct that hadn't quite extinguished despite her best efforts to smother it. The blood draw revealed what everyone already suspected. Kidney function declining. Liver enzymes elevated. A1C at 9.2, deep into diabetic range. Cholesterol numbers that made the phlebotomist wince. Her body was a cascade of failing systems, each one dragging the others down. Dr. Brennan reviewed the results without comment, then laid out the meal plan. 6 small meals a day, 1,200 calories total, protein shakes, measured portions, a schedule printed and laminated, hung on the wall where Marissa couldn't avoid seeing it. Claire took control of the credit cards, deleted the delivery apps from Marissa's phone, cleared out every snack and processed food from the apartment. The pantry and refrigerator were restocked with the prescribed items only. The first day felt like withdrawal, because it was withdrawal. Marissa's body, accustomed to thousands of calories daily, revolted against the sudden deprivation. Headaches, nausea, tremors. She sweated and shook and begged Claire for just a little more food, just something to take the edge off. Claire said no. For the first time in years, she held the boundary. Week 1 was hell. Week 2 was worse. Marissa's body began to metabolize its own tissue, releasing toxins stored in fat cells, making her feel poisoned from within. She vomited. She couldn't sleep. Her heart raced at odd hours. Dr. Brennan had warned her this would happen, that years of abuse couldn't be undone without consequences, but knowing didn't make it bearable. By week 3, the acute symptoms had subsided, replaced by a different kind of suffering. The psychological agony of living without the coping mechanism that had sustained her since childhood. Food had been comfort, distraction, punishment, reward. It had been the architecture around which she'd built her entire adult life. Without it, she was exposed, raw, forced to actually feel the things she'd been eating to avoid feeling. The grief came first. For her mother, dead 30 years but suddenly present in a way she hadn't been since the funeral. Marissa cried for days, messy, ugly crying that left her exhausted and puffy-faced. Then came anger, at her father for checking out, at Claire for enabling her for so long, at herself for wasting decades in this prison of flesh. The anger burned hot and then burned out, leaving behind something quieter and more dangerous. Self-awareness. She'd done this to herself. That was the unbearable truth. No one had force-fed her. No one had chained her to the bed. Every bite had been her choice, thousands of choices compounded over years until the weight of them became literal. She couldn't blame childhood trauma or genetic predisposition or anything else. She'd built this cage herself, one meal at a time. Week 7. The scale showed 663 pounds, 58 pounds lost in 49 days. Dr. Brennan came for the weekly weigh-in and allowed himself a small nod of acknowledgement. Not praise, just recognition that she was doing what needed to be done. 22 more pounds to hit the surgical threshold, 13 days to do it. That night, Marissa woke at 2 a.m. with pain in her left leg, unlike anything she'd experienced before. Not the usual lymphedema ache. This was sharp, burning, spreading from her calf upward toward her knee. She called for Claire, voice tight with panic. Claire appeared, turned on the light, pulled back the blanket. What she saw made her go pale. Marissa's left leg was swollen to twice its normal size, the skin tight and shiny, angry red streaks radiating from a wound on her ankle that had split open. The skin around it was hot to the touch. The smell was unmistakable. Infection, but worse than the chronic infections they'd been managing. This was acute. This was septic. "We need to go to the hospital," Claire said, already reaching for her phone. "No." Marissa's voice was desperate. "No hospitals. They'll make me stop the diet. They'll pump me full of fluids and I'll gain weight and I'll miss the deadline." "You could die." "I'm going to die anyway if I don't have this surgery. Please, just call Dr. Brennan. See what he says." Claire looked at her sister, at the leg that clearly needed emergency intervention, and made a decision that would haunt her either way. She called Dr. Brennan. He answered on the second ring, listened to the description, and told them he was coming immediately. He arrived 40 minutes later with a medical bag and an expression that said this was exactly the kind of crisis he'd been expecting. One look at the leg and his assessment was immediate. Severe cellulitis, potentially developing into necrotizing fasciitis. The infection had reached deep tissue. Without aggressive IV antibiotics, Marissa would be septic within 24 hours. With them, administered in a hospital setting, she might stabilize, but hospitalization meant the end of the aggressive weight loss. Meant fluids and bed rest and medical protocols that would add weight, not remove it. Meant missing the deadline by miles. Hospital, Dr. Brennan said. Now, this isn't negotiable. What about the surgery? Marissa's voice was small, already knowing the answer. The surgery happens when you're not dying of sepsis. If we're lucky, and the infection responds to treatment, we reassess in a few weeks. If we're not lucky, the surgery becomes irrelevant because you'll be dead. The ambulance arrived 15 minutes later. The paramedics brought a bariatric transport unit, a stretcher rated for her weight. The transfer from bed to stretcher required 4 people and inflicted agony on the infected leg. Marissa bit through her lip to keep from screaming. The taste of blood filled her mouth. As they wheeled her out, through the bedroom door, through the apartment she hadn't left in 4 years, into the cool night air that felt alien against her skin, she caught a glimpse of herself in the building's glass door. A mountain of flesh on a reinforced stretcher, an IV already being placed in her arm, Claire following behind with tears streaming down her face. This was what she'd become. This was the consequence of every choice she'd made and refused to make. The ambulance doors closed, the sirens started, and Marissa understood with perfect clarity that she'd reached the actual breaking point, not metaphorical, not emotional, but physical. Her body was breaking. The question now was whether there was anything left to save. The hospital kept her for 11 days. The infection had reached the fascia, the layer of tissue between skin and muscle, and required surgical debridement, cutting away the dead and dying tissue to prevent the spread. She was awake for the procedure, local anesthesia only, because her weight made general anesthesia too dangerous. She watched the ceiling tiles and listened to the sound of the surgeon cutting into her own flesh, removing pieces of herself that had already started to rot. The IV antibiotics worked slowly. Her fever broke on day 4. The red streaks faded by day 7. By day 9, the wound was clean enough to begin healing on its own, though it would leave a crater in her calf the size of a fist. The medical team kept her immobile, pumped her full of fluids to flush the infection, fed her a standard hospital diet of 2,000 calories a day. When they finally discharged her on day 11, she'd gained back 19 pounds. Dr. Brennan met her at Claire's apartment the day after her return. He said nothing about the weight gain, nothing about the missed deadline. He just looked at her with an expression she couldn't read and asked one question. "Do you want to live?" "Yes," she said, and meant it. "Then we start again, same terms. 60 days, 80 pounds, but this time you're starting from 682 instead of 721. That's still progress, even with the setback. Can you do it?" She didn't know, but she nodded anyway. The second attempt was different. Not easier, nothing about it was easy, but different in the way she approached it. The near-death experience had clarified something fundamental. She could no longer pretend this was hypothetical. Death wasn't a distant abstraction. It was the immediate possibility that had come within inches of claiming her. She'd felt it in the hospital, hovering, waiting. It would come back. The only question was when. The meal plan resumed. 1,200 calories, 6 small meals, protein-heavy to preserve muscle mass during rapid weight loss. Her body, having just been through trauma and recovery, resisted the renewed restriction. But Marissa pushed through the discomfort in a way she hadn't before. When the cravings came, and they came constantly relentless as waves, she didn't try to ignore them or pretend they weren't there. She acknowledged them, sat with them, let them exist without acting on them. It was a form of suffering she'd spent her entire life avoiding. Now she leaned into it. Claire watched this transformation with cautious hope. She'd seen false starts before, seen commitment that evaporated as soon as it became uncomfortable. But something was different this time. Marissa didn't complain, didn't negotiate, didn't ask for exceptions. She ate what was put in front of her and nothing else. The desperation in her was visible, palpable, the desperate focus of someone who finally understood what was at stake. Movement became the next frontier. For months, Marissa had been almost completely sedentary, her world bounded by the distance from bed to commode. Dr. Brennan introduced gentle exercises, leg lifts, arm circles, anything to preserve muscle and increase metabolism. Each movement was agony. Her joints, bearing hundreds of excess pounds for years, protested every shift in position. But she did them anyway, grimacing through the pain because the alternative was staying still, and staying still meant dying. Week 3 of the new timeline. The scale showed 651 pounds. 31 pounds lost since leaving the hospital, 89 total since the original starting weight. She'd crossed the threshold. She was eligible for surgery. Dr. Brennan scheduled the pre-operative appointments, the cardiac clearance, the psychological evaluation, the nutritional counseling. The surgery was set for 6 weeks out, time to lose more weight and reduce surgical risk as much as possible. The psychological evaluation was mandatory for all bariatric surgery candidates. Marissa met with Dr. Hassan, a psychiatrist who specialized in eating disorders and obesity. The session lasted 2 hours. Dr. Hassan asked about her childhood, her relationship with food, her support system, her understanding of what life would be like after surgery. Marissa answered honestly for the first time in years, holding nothing back, admitting the things she'd hidden even from herself. "The surgery isn't magic," Dr. Hassan said at the end. "It's a tool. A powerful one, but still just a tool. You'll still be you after. The same trauma, the same coping mechanisms, the same patterns of thought. The difference is you won't be able to eat your way through them anymore. What are you going to do instead?" Marissa didn't have an answer. Dr. Hassan prescribed therapy twice weekly, starting immediately. Marissa agreed. She was agreeing to everything now, saying yes to every intervention, every suggestion, every form of help being offered. She'd said no for so long it had nearly killed her. Now she was learning a different word. Week 5, 618 pounds, 103 pounds lost. Her body was changing in ways that were visible now. Her face had definition again, cheekbones emerging from flesh that had buried them for years. Her arms were smaller. Her breathing was easier. The CPAP machine sat unused on the nightstand because her sleep apnea had improved to the point where she no longer needed it. Small victories that felt enormous. Claire cried the first time Marissa stood up without assistance. It took 5 minutes of preparation, required the walker for stability, and Marissa could only stay vertical for 30 seconds before needing to sit. But she did it, under her own power, for the first time in years. The physical therapy sessions began. A therapist came to the apartment 3 times a week, working with Marissa on strength and mobility. The sessions were brutal. Every muscle had atrophied from disuse. Every joint was damaged from years of bearing excessive weight. But the therapist was patient and relentless, pushing Marissa to the edge of her capability and then just slightly beyond. Progress was measured in inches, walking 3 feet instead of 2, standing for 45 seconds instead of 30. Week 8. 594 pounds, 127 pounds lost. Dr. Brennan did the final pre-operative assessment. Blood work showed dramatic improvement. Kidney function normalizing. Liver enzymes dropping. A1C down to 7.1, still diabetic but moving in the right direction. Her heart, while still strained, was functioning better than it had in years. "You did it," Dr. Brennan said, and something in his voice suggested he was surprised. "Surgery is scheduled for next Tuesday. After that, the real work begins." Marissa nodded. She understood now what he meant. The surgery would make it physically impossible to overeat, would force portion control whether she wanted it or not. But it wouldn't fix the reasons she'd been eating in the first place. Those were still there, waiting. The difference was that now she knew they existed. Now she had tools other than food. Now she had a reason to use them. The night before surgery, Claire sat on the edge of Marissa's bed. They didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say that hadn't already been said through actions over the past months. Claire held Marissa's hand. Marissa held back. They sat like that until Claire had to leave for her shift, 2 sisters who'd nearly lost each other to a preventable death, still holding on. The surgery was scheduled for 6 a.m. Marissa was transported to the hospital the night before, admitted for pre-operative preparation and monitoring. She hadn't slept in a hospital bed since the infection, and the memories of that stay, the fever, the delirium, the certainty that she was dying, made rest impossible. She lay awake watching the clock, listening to the sounds of the hospital at night, the beeping monitors and distant voices and footsteps in hallways. Claire arrived at 5:30, still in scrubs from her own shift on a different floor. She looked exhausted, but she smiled when she saw Marissa was awake. They'd already said everything that needed saying. Claire squeezed her hand. Marissa squeezed back. No words necessary. Dr. Brennan appeared at 5:45 with the surgical team. He reviewed the procedure one final time, laparoscopic gastric bypass, rerouting her digestive system to create a small stomach pouch the size of an egg. The surgery would take 3 to 4 hours. The risks were substantial at her weight: blood clots, infection, surgical complications, anesthesia failure. But doing nothing carried a certainty of death that made the risks acceptable by comparison. "Any questions?" Dr. Brennan asked. Marissa shook her head. She'd asked all her questions over the past weeks. She understood what was about to happen, what it would mean, what it wouldn't fix. The surgery was a beginning, not an ending. The real test came after. They wheeled her to the operating room at 6:15. The lights were blindingly bright, the room cold and sterile. The anesthesiologist introduced himself, explained that putting her under safely required careful dosing, careful monitoring. One mistake with anesthesia at her weight could stop her heart or her breathing. She'd signed the consent forms. She knew the risks. She closed her eyes and let them put the mask over her face. The last thing she remembered was counting backward from 10. She made it to 7. She woke in recovery 4.5 hours later. The pain was immediate and all-consuming, a burning agony across her abdomen, where the surgical incisions had been made. She'd been cut open, rearranged, stitched back together. Her body knew it had been violated, even if her conscious mind had been absent for the violation. She groaned, and immediately a nurse was there adjusting her pain medication, speaking in soothing tones that Marissa couldn't quite process through the fog of drugs and discomfort. Dr. Brennan came by that evening. The surgery had gone well, he said. No complications, clean incisions, good visualization of the anatomy despite her weight. The bypass was complete. Her stomach was now the size of a walnut. For the rest of her life, she'd be able to eat only small amounts at a time. Overeating would result in immediate physical consequences: nausea, vomiting, dumping syndrome. Her body would enforce the limitations her willpower couldn't. The first week post-surgery was liquid only. Broth protein shakes, sugar-free gelatin. Marissa sipped from a medicine cup, 2 ounces at a time, and felt full. Actually full. Uncomfortably full from amounts that would have been a single bite in her previous life. The sensation was alien and disturbing and exactly what she needed. Her body was speaking a new language, and she had no choice but to learn it. By day 3, she was walking. Not far, just to the bathroom and back, but walking under her own power with a walker for support. The physical therapist came twice a day, pushing her to move to prevent blood clots, to begin the long process of rebuilding strength. Each step hurt, the incisions pulled. Her legs, still carrying nearly 600 pounds, protested the effort. But she walked anyway because the alternative was lying still, and she'd spent years lying still. That version of her life was over. The hospital discharged her on day 7. She'd lost 14 pounds since surgery, mostly fluid. She was 580 pounds now, still immense but trending downward at a rate that would have been impossible without surgical intervention. Dr. Brennan scheduled follow-ups for 2 weeks, then monthly after that. The nutritionist gave her a progression plan: liquids for 2 weeks, pureed foods for 2 weeks, soft foods for 2 weeks, then regular foods in small portions forever. Claire brought her home to the apartment that had been her prison for 4 years. Everything looked different now. Smaller somehow, less permanent. The bed was still there, the reinforced frame and medical mattress, but Marissa looked at it and didn't feel the gravitational pull that had kept her anchored there for so long. It was just a bed. She could leave it whenever she chose. The first month was adjustment, learning to eat with a stomach the size of a shot glass. Learning that certain foods, anything high in sugar or fat, made her violently ill. Learning that she could no longer eat her feelings because eating beyond tiny portions resulted in immediate physical punishment. The surgery had made overeating impossible, but it hadn't made the desire to overeat disappear. The therapy sessions with Dr. Hassan intensified. Twice a week, then 3 times a week, when Marissa started having panic attacks. Without food as a coping mechanism, All the emotions she'd been suppressing for decades came flooding in at once. Grief, rage, shame, loneliness, feelings she'd eaten to avoid feeling, now unavoidable and overwhelming. She cried in Dr. Hassan's office. She raged. She sat in silence for entire sessions, unable to articulate the chaos inside her head. "This is the real work," Dr. Hassan told her. "The surgery fixed your stomach. Now we fix everything else." Month 2. 538 pounds. 42 pounds lost since surgery, 169 total. Marissa could walk the length of the apartment without stopping, could shower standing up with help, could dress herself in clothes that Claire bought from specialty stores, sizes that were still enormous but smaller than before. Progress was visible. Progress was real. Month 3. 491 pounds. She'd broken 500, a threshold she never thought she'd cross going downward. Dr. Brennan was pleased but cautious. The first year post-surgery was typically when patients lost weight most rapidly. The real test was year 2, year 3, year 10. Could she maintain this? Could she live the rest of her life eating 6 bites per meal and feeling satisfied? Could she survive without the comfort that had sustained her since childhood? Marissa didn't know. But for the first time in her life, she was willing to try to find out. The surgery had saved her life. Now she had to figure out what to do with the life she'd been given back. The reckoning wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time, she was finally ready to face it. Great. I really enjoyed this topic. Please continue writing Topic 10, titled 10. Epilogue. 6 months later, so we can continue developing our exclusive and high-value content. Please submit this topic with a length of between 900 and 1,000 words in English. Make sure the text is consistent with the continuation of the story initially proposed. Ozo 640. Epilogue. 6 months later, Marissa stands at the window of her new apartment, not standing with a walker, not leaning against furniture for support, just standing. Her legs, still heavy but functional, hold her weight without trembling. Outside, the street is ordinary. Cars passing, people walking dogs, the mundane choreography of normal life. She watches for a few minutes, then turns away. 6 months ago, she couldn't have made it to this window. A year ago, she couldn't have imagined wanting to. The scale this morning read 372 pounds. She's lost 349 pounds in total, 208 of those since surgery. The numbers feel abstract, disconnected from the reality of her body. She's still obese by any medical definition, still has 150 pounds to lose before reaching anything approaching a healthy weight. But she can walk now, can climb stairs slowly and with effort, but she can do it. Can leave the apartment whenever she chooses, fit through doorways, sit in regular chairs. The world has opened up in ways she'd forgotten were possible. The loose skin is extensive, hanging in folds across her arms, her abdomen, her thighs. It will require surgical removal eventually, multiple procedures to excise the excess tissue left behind by rapid weight loss. Dr. Brennan has already scheduled the first consultation, but the skin doesn't bother her the way she thought it would. It's evidence, proof that she was somewhere else and made it here. Battle scars from a war she's still fighting, but no longer losing. Claire moved out 3 months ago, not out of anger or exhaustion, but because Marissa no longer needed round-the-clock care and Claire needed to reclaim her own life. They have dinner together twice a week now, a ritual that's become important to both of them. The relationship has shifted from caretaker-patient to something more equal, more honest. Claire can say no without guilt. Marissa can ask for help without shame. The years of toxic codependency are unwinding slowly, thread by thread. The apartment Marissa lives in now is smaller than the one she shared with Claire, a studio on the 2nd floor of a building without an elevator. The stairs are why she chose it. Every day she climbs those stairs at least twice, sometimes more. Each ascent is a reminder that her body can do things it couldn't do 6 months ago. The apartment itself is sparse. A bed, a small table, a chair, a television. She doesn't need much. Most of her life now happens outside these walls. She attends a bariatric surgery support group every Thursday evening. 15 people sitting in a circle in a hospital conference room, sharing their struggles and victories. Some are pre-surgery, still in the preparation phase. looking at Marissa with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Some are years post-surgery, maintaining their weight loss through vigilance and routine. Some are regaining weight, the surgery's restrictions overcome through constant grazing or liquid calories, their bodies finding ways around the physical limitations. Marissa listens to all of them and sees herself reflected in each story. The group has taught her that the surgery is not a cure. It's a tool that can be defeated, circumvented, rendered useless if she's determined enough. She's heard stories of people who stretched their stomach pouches by overeating, who drank milkshakes all day because liquids passed through the bypass, who lost 100 pounds and gained back 150. The surgery bought her time and imposed structure, but it can't save her from herself. Only she can do that, one meal at a time, for the rest of her life. Therapy with Dr. Hassan continues 3 times a week. The panic attacks have subsided, replaced by something more manageable. Chronic anxiety, depression that comes in waves, the occasional overwhelming urge to eat everything in sight. Dr. Hassan has helped her identify triggers, develop coping mechanisms that don't involve food. When she's anxious now, she walks. When she's sad, she calls Claire or someone from the support group. When she's overwhelmed, she sits with the feeling instead of trying to smother it with calories. It doesn't always work, but it works often enough to keep her moving forward. She started volunteering at the hospital where she had surgery, visiting with preoperative bariatric patients, sharing her story. It's uncomfortable, exposing her history to strangers, but it feels necessary. She tells them the truth. The surgery is painful, recovery is hard, and the changes are permanent. She tells them about the loose skin, the hair loss from rapid weight loss, the vitamin deficiencies, the way certain foods make her sick. She also tells them about walking upstairs and fitting in airplane seats and not worrying that she's about to die at 43. She tells them it's worth it if they're ready. The if does a lot of work in that sentence. Dr. Brennan sees her monthly. The visits are brief now, routine checkups rather than interventions. He reviews her blood work, all normal ranges now, diabetes in remission, cholesterol normalized, kidney and liver function perfect. He examines her incisions, healed, no complications. He weighs her and notes the continued loss, slower now but steady. He asks if she's following the eating plan. She says yes. He asks if she's having any issues. She says no. He says good, and schedules her next appointment. The routine is comforting in its mundanity. Some days are harder than others. There are moments when she passes a restaurant and the smell of food hits her like a physical blow, triggers cravings so intense she has to sit down and breathe through them. There are nights when she lies awake thinking about pizza, about burgers, about all the foods that used to be her world and are now mostly forbidden. The surgery made it physically difficult to overeat, but it didn't erase the psychological dependence. That's still there, probably always will be, a quiet voice suggesting that food could make everything better, just this once. But she doesn't listen to that voice anymore, or rather she listens to it, acknowledges it, and chooses differently. The choosing is exhausting. The choosing never stops. But the choosing is what keeps her alive. Marissa looks at the clock. Time for her afternoon walk, the 3-mile route she does every day, regardless of weather. She pulls on her shoes, regular shoes from a regular store, not specialty orthopedic equipment, and heads for the door. The stairs down are easier than the stairs up. She takes them one at a time, hand on the railing, breathing steady. At the bottom, she pushes open the building's front door and steps outside. The sun is bright, the air is cool, she's alive. And for today, that's enough. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life journeys of struggle, choices, and transformation, so you don't miss the next episodes and follow each step of these powerful life stories. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.